1999. Just as a worldwide oil shortage is poised to collapse the global economy, biochemist Dr. Keo Marv announces the completion of Oilix, a synthetic microalgae capable of rapidly producing petroleum-grade hydrocarbons. Oilix could, according to Dr. Marv, be a suitable replacement for oil as the world's de facto fuel resource. Whilst in the United States to present Oilix at the International Energy Crisis Summit, Dr. Marv disappeared from his CIA-guarded hotel room. Foul play is all but guaranteed. The most likely suspect, Zanzibarland, a small nation bordering Pakistan, China, Afghanistan, and former Soviet Union territory. A military junta came to power there in the early 90s and declared the autonomous zone to be a sovereign state, and the CIS disagreed. The ensuing conflict, retroactively named the Mercenary War, thanks to Zanzibarland's extensive employment of overseas mercenary companies, was one of few active conflicts in the world, thanks to the period of relative peace that followed the Cold War. And yet, almost immediately after Zanzibarland's victory in 1997, they became an antagonistic force in the region. Zanzibarland forces began assaulting nuclear disposal sites, seizing and stockpiling intact warheads. Then, they began leveraging their status as one of the world's few remaining nuclear powers to invade neighbouring regions with little resistance. If Zanzibarland has indeed captured Dr. Marv, it's likely that they plan to control the supply of Oilix fuel to the rest of the world, using the threat of nuclear war as security. Colonel Roy Campbell. He served as XO under Big Boss during his time in Foxhound. Campbell took over the unit after Big Boss was revealed as the mastermind behind the Outer Heaven uprising, and by 1998, he was the only remaining member of the unit who remembers the time under Big Boss. His Foxhound unit was handed the Zanzibar issue. He agreed on the condition that Foxhound was returned the only man he felt could accomplish such a mission. Solid Snake, ex-Foxhound, abandoned the unit and the United States following his mission 4 years ago. Sightings of a mercenary fitting his description were recorded across the globe in the years following his disappearance, until he was tracked down to a private location in the Canadian wilderness after attempting to source medication for his PTSD. December 24th. Snake crosses the Afghan-Zanzibar border via a high-altitude jump in the early hours before sunrise. Foxhound also conducts a diversionary operation along the Chinese border to distract Zanzibarland forces. Snake then free-climbed a cliff face, arriving at the southernmost point of the Zanzibarland fortress compound. For this mission, Snake has been given a cutting-edge anti-personnel radar. It allows him to better anticipate the movements of Zanzibarland guards, and more importantly, anticipating an incident like this, the US implanted a transmitter in one of Dr. Marv's teeth. Once Snake is in range, his radar will pin down the doctor's precise location. Snake's first move takes him from the plateau and into the base proper, crawling under a hole in the fence and into a parked truck, where he finds a handgun, Beretta M9, standard issue in the US military. Not far from the truck, a ventilation duct is missing its cover, and Snake crawls inside. Here, he's contacted by Holly White, a CIA agent who infiltrated Zanzibarland posing as a journalist. She provides Snake with crucial intel on the layout of the fortress, and Snake takes just about every opportunity to flirt with her. The vent shaft spits Snake out on the ground floor of the south building, a vehicle storage warehouse, but there isn't much for him here besides a series of locked doors. Narrowly avoiding the patrolling guards and ducking under security cameras, he slips into the elevator room at the centre of the building, gaining access to the upper floors. The second floor is also designated for equipment storage, but consists mostly of walkways between rooms that overlook the warehouse below. The metal grate flooring on the walkways shifts and clinks underfoot, so Snake will need to slowly crawl along it to prevent making any noise that could alert the guards. Here, Snake finds an all too familiar numbered keycard and the binoculars. Snake takes the keycard down to the first floor basement, which is mostly locked down with only the first card. But here he can stock up on ammo and collect the infrared goggles, a necessary tool for navigating the third floor of the south building. The third floor houses an R&D lab. To keep their experimental gear safe, Zanzibar security have filled the floor with laser detectors and radar sentries hooked up to alarm systems. These can only be seen through the infrared goggles. They've even filled some of the rooms with gas, which Snake will need to steal a mask from the guards to traverse. Whilst exploring the third floor, Snake's radar picks up a red dot, signifying a friendly transmitter in the centre room. Dr. Marv. Trying to find a way into the centre room, Snake ends up falling down a waste disposal chute. Here, the second floor basement is a large open space built around the sewer system that seems to stretch on for miles. The water is filled with mines, but there are no guards here. Instead, a handful of young children run around. Holly tells Snake the children are war orphans. These kids can be found in certain spots throughout Zanzibarland and will talk to Snake, sometimes even giving him useful hints. For now, there's nothing of interest here. Successfully finding his way through the lab, Snake arrives in the centre room and makes contact with Dr. Marv. The imposter reveals himself to be Black Ninja, a former member of a NASA Special Ops unit who defected to Zanzibarland. He wants to see how a member of Foxhound measures up, and immediately engages Snake. Black Ninja has enhanced superhuman speed that allows him to move much faster than Snake, almost appearing to teleport around the room, and he attacks Snake by throwing rounds of shurikens. Having been defeated, Black Ninja reveals his real identity, Kyle Schneider, the leader of the Outer Heaven resistance group who helped Snake on his mission 4 years ago. Schneider explains that the NATO bombing run that took place immediately after Snake escaped from Outer Heaven didn't just destroy the facility. NATO razed the entire base, indiscriminately killing not just the Outer Heaven forces and the resistance fighting them, but hundreds of civilians and children who were living in the surrounding area. Schneider tells Snake that just like Zanzibar, Outer Heaven housed war orphans and refugees from all over the world, but leaving them alive would be a liability. Instead, NATO chose to sweep their mess under the rug and forget. Schneider warns Snake that if and when he becomes more trouble than he's worth, they'll get rid of him too, but the leader of Zanzibarland would forgive him, grant him a new home, just like he had for the survivors of Outer Heaven. Refusing to give Snake a name, Schneider dies, passing on a hint of Dr. Marv's true location, as a sign that there's no grudge between them. As Schneider dies, a small bomb implanted into his body detonates, destroying any evidence of his existence. Many elite members of the Zanzibar mercenary army get this treatment, but it isn't clear if Zanzibar did this themselves or if the bombs are old security measures left behind by previous employers. From the ashes, Snake retrieves a new keycard and heads back to the first floor in search of the man with the green beret. Inside the tank storage room, accessed using Black Ninja's keycard, Snake identifies the soldier in the green beret, who he follows out of a back door and into the jungle. Out here, Snake needs to follow close behind the officer to avoid becoming lost, but the officer regularly turns around, and if he spots Snake following him, he'll disappear into the jungle, and Snake will need to retrace his steps to the tank storage room and track the officer from there. If Snake remains undetected, the officer will eventually finish his patrol by a small hut deep in the jungle, checking that its prisoner hasn't been disturbed. Now that Snake has found the hut, he can take out the officer and successfully navigate the jungle alone. The inside of the hut appears empty, but Snake's radar will detect someone hidden in an adjacent, inaccessible room. Leaning up against the wall, he can hear the person knocking against it, tapping out a code. Snake recognizes these knocks as tap code used in the Vietnam War. Snake uses the guide in his mission briefing to decipher a series of numbers, 14082. Snake tunes to the frequency 140.82, and Dr. Madnar picks up. Madnar explains that despite not speaking the same languages, he and Dr. Marv worked together in Prague, and they were both captured by Zanzibarland's mercenaries. Snake presses Madnar for Marv's location, but he's been transferred to the tower building north of the jungle. To make matters worse, there's only one reason Zanzibarland would keep Madnar alive: Metal Gear. The one Snake destroyed 4 years ago in Outer Heaven was only a prototype. With Madnar's help, Zanzibarland has completed production of a new, improved model, and have already begun testing on a smaller, lighter type for mass production. This new Metal Gear was the secret behind Zanzibarland's rapid success in the past few years. Using Oilix as fuel, and the only nuclear warheads left on Earth, Zanzibarland's leader has set the stage to conquer the world overnight. Madnar fears that Marv won't be able to resist his torture for long, and Zanzibarland may already have the Oilix formula. The room Madnar is trapped in is heavily armoured, so Snake will have to leave him behind, but he promises to come back for the Doctor, who wants to survive and see his daughter Ellen get married. Just as Snake's about to leave, Madnar gives him a lead about a female Czech state security agent, who's undercover here in Zanzibarland. She could be the key to finding Marv, but he doesn't know how to get in touch with her. Heading through the jungle towards the tower, Snake runs into a minefield. Thanks to a tip from an anonymous fan who contacts him on the radio, he avoids walking straight into one, and he's able to retrieve the explosives without detonating them by crawling over them. However, beyond the minefield is a heavily armoured helicopter patrolling the route north. To take it down, Snake's going to need something a little bigger than his M9. Doubling back, Snake finds himself on the bank of a large swamp. One of the war orphans tell him that the soldiers call it a bottomless swamp, but he's seen trucks driving through it. Following the kid's advice, Snake wades his way into the swamp, testing where the water is shallow enough to cross without drowning. At the far side of the swamp is another small building, and inside, Snake comes into contact with another of Zanzibar's elite mercenaries. Running Man. He's much faster than Snake, and will simply avoid him for as long as he can, waiting on the gas in the room to kill Snake for him. Simply chasing down Running Man won't work. Instead, Snake needs to anticipate his movements and place mines in his path to take him down. Defeating Running Man, Snake collects his keycard, which he uses to break into a supply room he heard about from another of the war orphans, collecting a set of Stinger missiles. Missiles in tow, Snake can now continue his hike north, once again running into the Hind D. The Hind will chase Snake across a large open field, raining down machine gun fire. The Stinger missile is strong, but Snake will need to correctly time 4 hits in order to blast through its armour, and he won't be able to dodge its fire while aiming. Only once the helicopter goes down will he be able to cross the last of the desert to the tower building. Outside the tower, Snake finds a cardboard box. If he can stay still, he can hide inside of it from cameras and guards, but more importantly, Snake can use the box to ride the cargo belts into the tower undetected. The tower building earns its title. 30 above ground floors house countless mercenaries armed and waiting. But first, Snake needs to go down. Holly has been captured. She can hear water running all around her, meaning she must be somewhere near the underground waterways that connect the tower building to the southern base. The tower building's basement is home to several of the war orphans, who mention a one-eyed man who is searching for a man in green. Holly has told them not to tell the one-eyed man about Snake. In a supply room here, Snake finds a set of C4 plastic explosives, which he can use to break down the walls of the pump room and meet up with Holly. Holly thanks Snake for the rescue and gives him all the information she's collected while she was undercover, after, of course, some flirting. Holly hasn't been able to get close to Dr. Marv, but he was able to tie a note on the foot of a carrier pigeon, which should be somewhere near the roof of the tower building. Of course, Zanzibarland security spotted it when Marv released it, and Snake is sure to run into the searching party when he's up there. Holly gives Snake her keycard, and they promise to stay alive and meet up again later. Before heading to the roof, Snake makes a stop at the 10th floor, where he uses the rest of the C4 to break into a hidden room containing a stash of what the orphans call green pineapples. After sneaking his way into the centre of the building, Snake can access the express elevator that takes him all the way to the 30th floor. The room has been filled with tripwires that slow Snake down, leaving him vulnerable to the grenades thrown by an elite mercenary guarding this floor. Former Spetsnaz Red Blaster. Red Blaster hides behind cover and will always stay out of reach of Snake's standard weaponry. The only way for Snake to take him down is to use his own trick against him, lobbing grenades over the cover. Only after Red Blaster is dealt with can Snake safely break through the tripwires and use the fire escape stairs to reach the roof. On the roof, Snake spots the pigeon and lures it down to him with some rations. Marv's message on the note is gibberish. With the help of Foxhound's Master Miller, the man who trained Snake, he figures out that flipping the note upside down spells out a new frequency, and Snake is finally able to contact Dr. Marv. Of course, Marv doesn't speak English. Neither Czech or Slovak are included in the 6 languages Snake has been trained in, so he heads back down the tower in search of the STB agent, a woman named Gustava. Returning to the southern building, Snake makes his way to the barracks, the only place in Zanzibarland with a women's bathroom. Here, Snake hides in the cardboard box until one of the soldiers goes inside. He follows her in, where it's safe for Gustava to reveal herself. Snake mentions that he recognizes Gustava. She doesn't appreciate his pickup line, but it turns out he really does recognize her. She was once a gold medalist Olympic ice skater, although she denies her former life. Using Snake's radio, Gustava contacts Dr. Marv and gets his location. He's locked up in the prison building beyond a large canyon north of here, and Gustava knows a shortcut. Taking the standard issue women's bathroom to sewers elevator and avoiding the giant sweeping machines that patrol the sewers, Snake and Gustava meet up with Madnar, adding him to the party and getting another keycard from Gustava. After a short time traversing the sewers, Madnar asks Snake to stop and rest, and moves away from the group to take care of some business. While he's gone, Snake and Gustava talk. She talks about her mother's stories of hiding in sewers like this from the Nazis during their occupation of Poland. She asks Snake if he's married, but he has no family. Gustava laments that she never had the chance to get married, and talks about a boyfriend she once had when she was a skater, a man named Frank Jaeger. She was, and seemingly still is, in love with him, but he was from the West, and her request for asylum was rejected. Because of her attempted defection, her family were persecuted by the Soviets, and she was banned from skating, forced to join the military. Despite it all, she says she doesn't regret a thing, and that her new career has taught her a lot about the world, but she was never able to reconnect with Frank. Before they can say any more, Madnar returns from his extended bathroom break. Moving forward, the group reach the end of the sewer and take an elevator up to the edge of the crevice. The bridge that spans the crevice is only big enough for one person at a time, so Madnar volunteers to go first. After him, Gustava begins to cross, but just as she's stepping out, she's hit by a launched explosive that destroys the bridge and throws her back onto Snake's side of the crevice. Snake tries to help her, but her wounds are too grave. She laments that she was never able to settle down, and wonders aloud if Snake was the kind of man she could have done it with. She gives Snake her brooch and closes her eyes. Her last thoughts are of her first love. Madnar calls to Snake from across the crevice, but he's taken away by two guards. Behind him, Metal Gear steps out into view, its pilot revealing himself to be Grey Fox. Fox tells Snake to abandon his mission and go home, and he leaves with Madnar. Hawley gives Snake the location of a hang glider, which he can use to cross the crevice by jumping from the tower building veranda. After collecting the hang glider and on his way to the veranda, Snake is contacted by Grey Fox. He's disappointed that Snake turned down his offer to abandon the mission, and stops the elevator between floors, sending a special assassination team down the elevator shaft to eliminate Snake. The team is designated the Four Horsemen, and they're pretty tough to handle in such a confined area. It's a pretty close call, but Snake is able to take them all down one by one. The elevator falls all the way back down to the surface level, and is completely disabled. With the express elevator out of order, floor 10 is as high as Snake can get. From there, he'll need to take the stairs. Grey Fox, of course, anticipates this plan, and sends a huge team of guards after him. Too many to take down on his own. Snake simply has to run all the way to the veranda on the 20th floor. With the guards not far behind him, Snake runs out onto the veranda, but just before he jumps, he receives a tip from the anonymous fan, who tells Snake to wait for the wind to blow north. Following that advice, Snake is able to safely glide to the other side of the crevice. Sure enough, he barely makes it. Some bad wind could have sent him straight into the cliff face. Finally outside the prison compound, Snake finds it guarded by a laser gate. Unsure of how to proceed, he follows the perimeter wall of the compound until he comes across an isolated building on its edge, surrounded by tall grass. In the grass, Snake is ambushed by one of the elite mercenaries, Jungle Evil. Originally serving in the Vietnam War, and later returning to his home country to serve in the South African Special Forces, Jungle Evil is a guerrilla warfare specialist, specifically in jungle environments. He hides silently in the grass until the moment of his attack, jumping out only momentarily to gun Snake down with his submachine gun. Only by tricking Jungle Evil to come out of the grass on the opposite side of some cover and lobbing grenades at him can Snake defeat him and escape. The building Jungle Evil was guarding is a biolab, and inside Snake finds a pair of eggs being kept under specific conditions to prevent hatching. Removing them from the lab, both hatch soon after. One contained a small snake, which begins eating Snake's rations if he isn't quick enough to dump it out of his backpack. By the time he makes his way to the prison compound, the second egg hatches, a local species of owl. The owls here only come out just before dawn, and the guards have come to expect the next shift arriving soon after hearing their calls. Snake's owl's call tricks the guards into opening the laser gate to let the next shift in, and he's able to slip into the prison compound. Inside one of the buildings, Snake finds a hidden elevator, which he takes down into the basement area. Here, another elite mercenary blocks his path, Night Fright. The anonymous fan tells Snake that Night Fright is wearing an experimental stealth camouflage suit, making him effectively invisible, and wields a totally silent gun. Thanks to the early warning, Snake is able to get the jump on Night Fright, using his footsteps to locate him and take him down. Snake enters the cell to find Dr. Marv laid out on a bed. Standing over him is Dr. Madnar. Snake checks on the doctor, but Marv has been killed by strangulation. Madnar assures Snake that all of Marv's work, including the Oilix formula, has been saved in case of his death. As an avid video game enthusiast, Marv stored all of his information on a microfilm hidden inside of a video game cartridge, one of which is locked in this room. During their conversation, Holly interrupts to relay some information she's received from the CIA. Noticing some of Madnar's strange behaviour, she requested a background check on the doctor, and discovered that after being rescued from outer heaven, Madnar was ostracised by the scientific community, and turned to Zanzibarland, who had him use his friendship with Marv to lure him into being kidnapped. Madnar confesses, declaring his spite for the governments of both East and West, who rejected Metal Gear, the ultimate weapon and culmination of Madnar's life's work. He even admits to killing Marv, and calling Grey Fox from the sewers to have Gustava killed. At that moment, Madnar lunges for Snake, managing to get behind him and begin strangling him. Unable to shake the doctor, Snake has to use the RC missile to hit the doctor from behind, finishing him off before he chokes Snake out. Reeling from his injuries, Madnar mutters something about Gustava's brooch being the key, and then collapses. Trying the brooch, Snake is able to open the locker, and after luring some rats away with a ration, finally collects the MSX cartridge that contains the Oilix formula. As Snake walks past his body, Madnar manages one final warning, a threat that Metal Gear will be used to secure Oilix no matter what. This distracts Snake long enough that a pitfall trap opens up beneath him, and Snake falls even further into the basement. Here, in the depths of Zanzibarland, Grey Fox confronts Snake, piloting the new Metal Gear. Metal Gear charges at Snake, using heat-seeking missile salvos and its mounted machine gun, but by targeting the weak leg armor with the last of his grenades, Snake is able to take it down. Metal Gear explodes, enveloping the room in flames. In order to extinguish the fire, Snake has to discard all of his equipment and weapons. Despite being unarmed, he chases Grey Fox further into the basement. Snake finds Grey Fox in a small room surrounded by a ring of mines. He challenges Snake to one last fight to the death, hand to hand. Fox is fast, and uses the small room to his advantage, trying to bait Snake to chase him down and step on the mines. Instead, Snake relies on Fox's desire to kill to pull him towards Snake, where he has the upper hand, and Snake is able to defeat the legendary mercenary. Grey Fox, accepting his defeat, relinquishes the title of Fox, but Snake turns it down, simply asking why he betrayed his country. Fox reveals that long before joining Foxhound, Big Boss had rescued him from Vietnam, where he'd been fighting as a child soldier. As much as Fox hates war, he's grown to need it as the only life he's ever known. The same goes for all the war orphans living in Zanzibarland. Fox has given up on living a normal life. He tells Snake that he was once in love with a woman named Gustava, but they could never be together because she was denied entry to the West. He grew to despise the politics and lies. He turned his back on the normal world and sought out war with the man who saved his life, and the leader of Zanzibarland, Big Boss. As Fox dies, he tells Snake that he was the fan who'd been giving him hints along the way. Snake thanks him for his help and swears never to turn out like he did, consumed by the killing. As he dies, Fox's last thoughts are of Gustava. Snake retrieves the cartridge from Fox's body and keeps moving forward. At the end of a hallway, a door opens itself to welcome Snake inside. Beyond it waits Big Boss. Big Boss assures Snake that his nightmares will never go away, that he's already too far gone. He will only ever be satisfied by war and killing. Just like the children of Zanzibarland, victims of war's Big Boss started, that he will train to become soldiers themselves and feed them into tomorrow's wars, starting the cycle anew. With endless war, soldiers will never be without a place, without purpose. He argues that no matter what, soldiers like he and Snake are doomed to remain here until they die like dogs on the battlefield. No matter who wins today, one will be liberated from war, and the other will remain, living out the rest of his days as a soldier. Snake swears that he isn't like Big Boss or Fox, that he won't be consumed by war, so Big Boss promises to do him one last favour, and put Snake down. With no way to defend him, it seems Snake's fight is hopeless. But evading Big Boss and searching the basement, Snake's able to scrounge together a lighter and a can of spray paint that he uses to create a makeshift flamethrower, chasing down Big Boss and setting him ablaze. As Big Boss burns, he stumbles around the room, eventually collapsing and screaming out, "It's not over yet, Snake." Finally, the flames die down, and Big Boss is dead. On his way out of the basement, Snake is caught at gunpoint by a guard. But the guard reveals themselves to be Holly in disguise, and she hands Snake a gun, asking him if it's really all over. Snake calls in Charlie, his exfiltration helicopter, and arranges a pickup in the jungle on the surface. On their way out, Snake and Holly run into the last of the Zanzibarland forces. With no time to stop and fight, they just keep moving towards the exit, with dozens of reinforcements in pursuit. Making their last stand at the rendezvous site, Snake and Holly fend off countless soldiers. Sooner rather than later, Snake runs out of ammo, and they're surrounded by guards. All seems lost, but a burst from Charlie's mounted machine gun cuts them down, and the chopper lowers down a ladder. Snake and Holly climb aboard, Snake already thinking of the Christmas dinner he'll have when he makes it home.